Now, let's also update an issue we first raised a couple of months ago. A trans prisoner, described as still having a working penis, yes, a biological male, is currently being held in a female Victorian jail. This is despite the prisoner having committed sex offences against women. Following complaints from female inmates, Women's Forum Australia are now pushing Victorian authorities to relocate the prisoner. Joining me now is Women's Forum Australia CEO Rachael Wong. Thanks for talking to us again, Rachael. Tell us where you're at with this. It would seem a no-brainer to most people that this is not an ideal situation. What is the Victorian government telling you?
That's exactly right, Chris. So a couple of months ago, we contacted Corrections Victoria along with a bunch of other Victorian leaders, and they came back to us a couple of weeks ago to say that they will actually be meeting about this in October. So as you say, housing a violent male sex offender with a working penis in a women's prison where he has already committed sexual offences against women, and where those women also have, histories of sexual assault themselves, is clearly not ideal at all and is a complete failure of the system over there.
Now, are you getting concerns expressed to you directly by female prisoners?
So we haven't ourselves been in touch with the female prisoners. We took up this campaign with the Coalition for Biological Reality, along with a bunch of other women's advocates like Catherine Deves, Sal Grover and so on, because we'd heard reports that the female prisoners were, terrified. They were beside themselves that this man had been housed in the women's prison and was going to be integrated with them into the female population. So after we heard that no authorities had basically listened to their pleas for help, we started up our own petition and have now had almost 7,000 members of the community sign that petition to ask Corrections Victoria and other Victorian leaders to remove this man from the prison. And let me be clear, we're not saying that this person shouldn't have their own rights protected and that they shouldn't have their own safety protected. What we are saying is that shouldn't be happening at the expense of women's rights and women's safety.
Yeah, I think we can just put up on the screen now this petition that you're referring to. Tell us where people can find that, have a look at it and perhaps sign it if they wish.
Yeah, so that's been housed on our website at womensforumaustralia.org/no men in women's prisons. And it basically asks for the removal of all males being housed in women's prisons throughout Victoria, but in particular this male sex offender who is in the Dame Phyllis Frost Women's Prison. It's also actually quite important to note that there has been an allegation of a sexual assault in another Victorian women's prison. So this is by no means, a kind of abstract issue. And in addition to that, there's been reports of assaults, actual assaults of female prisoners in prisons overseas by trans-identifying male prisoners, to the extent that the UK last month has actually said that they are going to be tightening their policy around this issue to prevent things like that happening again.
Yeah, this is a problem around the world, and partly it's a result of the woke gender politics, that men can have babies and all the rest of it, but there are real people caught up in difficult situations here. Obviously, a women's prison is not the place for someone who is biologically male, but at the same time, obviously, if this is a transgender woman, then a male prison is not the place for her. Where should this person be imprisoned?
This person could be kept in a separate wing for trans people potentially, or by themselves, but being housed in a women's prison with vulnerable women is certainly not the right place.
When we're talking about people's human rights here, you're talking about de facto solitary confinement for someone based on their gender reality or identity.
I agree, Chris. Solitary confinement definitely isn't ideal either, but there needs to be a solution that we come to that does not put the rights and safety of women at risk.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing the issue to our attention. Victorian government, no doubt governments around the country are going to have to work out ways to deal with these issues, not just on a case by case. They're going to have some policies in place that deal with it time and time again. Thanks again for your time, Rachael.
Thank you, Chris.
Rachael Wong there, who heads up Women's Forum Australia.